Emma's hands shook, not from nerves, but from years of kneading dough for community BBQs where she hid behind casseroles. Now, her cousin Jamal leaned in, breath smelling of peppermint gum. "Come on, fam, Seattle needs those mugs you stash under sink." A 45-year-old accountant with clay under her nails? Absurd. Yet here she stood, staring down a pottery wheel like it owed her money. One wobble, one splatter of glaze, and her rep as woman who never missed a tax deadline would crack. Emma's hands shook, not from nerves, but from years of holding too tight. 45 summers had taught her how brittle life could be, how easily things cracked under pressure. Yet here she stood, apron smudged with clay, staring down a spinning wheel like it might bite. Seattle drizzle tapped studio window, a quiet rhythm mocking her hesitation. She'd signed up for this pottery class on a whim, same way she'd once signed divorce papers, quick, before courage fled. Back then, fear had coiled around her ribs like a stubborn vine, whispering she'd never belong. But clay didn't judge shaky hands. It demanded surrender, not perfection. First attempt wobbled, collapsed. She snorted. "Well, fam, guess we're making abstract art." Weeks passed. Mornings once spent overthinking grocery line small talk became hours lost in wheels hum. Fingers learned weight of earth, how to coax curves from chaos. Muscle memory replaced second guessing. Community center BBQs buzzed around her, but for once, she didn't count exits. Hands busy shaping a vase, she barely noticed when laughter slipped out, unguarded, unpracticed. Exhibition night loomed. Old fears hissed, who shows up halfway through life with lopsided bowls? But her pieces sat proudly on display, glazed in blues like Puget Sound twilight. One mug bore a thumbprint flaw near handle. She traced it, remembering a childhood mud pie, long buried under schutz. Strangers lingered her table. No one asked about tremors or lonely years. They asked about clay. And for first time in decades, Emma didn't brace for cracks. She leaned in, spinning stories instead of worries, her voice as steady as wheels' heartbeat. Emma's hands shook, not from nerves, but from years of holding back. Clay spun beneath her fingers, cool and forgiving, as if it knew her secrets. A rogue splatter hit her cheek, leaving a muddy freckle. She laughed, swiping it away with a wrist already streaked in earth. 45 years old, and here she was, rediscovering gravity through a spinning wheel. Seattle's drizzle blurred studio windows, but inside, warmth hummed. A crew of misfits, retired teachers, a barista with ink-stained sleeves, a grandma who swore by neon kiln gloves, became her accidental fam. No one asked why she'd signed up. They just handed her a sponge and said, "Wet it more, or your bowl's gonna look like my first marriage," cracked. Mornings began with coffee stains on aprons, afternoons with community BBQs where her lopsided mugs held potato salad. Each piece carried fingerprints, imperfections she'd once hidden. Clay didn't judge. It bent, collapsed, reshaped. So did she. Then came whispers of an exhibition. "Bring what scares you," said Flyer. Emma's stomach lurched. But her mentor, a woman with silver braids and a habit of humming Motown while trimming glaze, nudged her forward. "Anxiety's just kiln fire. Burns off what doesn't belong." Opening night, spotlights glared. Emma's centerpiece, a vase with deliberate cracks filled gold, kintsugi style, sat beside others' work. Strangers leaned in, tracing fissures. No one saw shaky hands. They saw strength and break. Rain tapped rooftops as she walked home, lighter. Clay had taught her this: spinning wheels stop, but hands? They keep moving. Emma's hands shook, not from nerves, but from years of holding back. 45 summers had taught her how to fold into herself, how to let chatter wash over her like Seattle drizzle. But clay didn't care about awkward pauses or second guessing. It demanded stubbornness. So she pushed into it, palms gritty, knuckles white, until that wobbly lump on wheel became something almost brave. Community BBQs had always been her kryptonite, too many faces, too much small talk about marinades and mortgages. But now she had an excuse to arrive late, leave early, or just hover by potato salad with dirt under her nails. "Emma's got a vessel to finish," her neighbor would say, waving her off like some artsy eccentric instead of a woman who once hid in bathroom during karaoke. Progress. Mistakes were part of process. A collapsed rim, a glaze that bubbled like bad soup, each flub was a chance to cuss under her breath, then reshape damn thing. She wasn't some Instagram potter with perfect coils and a serene smile. Her mugs had thumbprints. Her bowls listed like drunken sailors. But they held water. They held weight. When local gallery announced its mud and merit exhibition, Emma's gut said nope. But her hands, calloused and wiser now, signed up anyway. Packing her pieces felt like shipping off nervous kids to summer camp. What if folks sneered? What if some hipster called her work quaint? Then again, what if someone saw their own lopsided life in those curves? Opening night, she stood near her display, sipping cheap wine, pretending to study an abstract sculpture that looked like a sneeze in 3D. But then a pause. A stranger tracing rim of her favorite bowl, nodding. No grand epiphany, no tears. Just quiet recognition. Clay hadn't fixed her. But it gave her a place to put mess. And sometimes, that was enough. Emma's hands shook, not from nerves, but from years of molding clay into something solid, something real. That old will spun like her thoughts before therapy, before pottery became her anchor. Now, 45, she stood in a Seattle community center surrounded by strangers, her latest piece, a vase with jagged edges and smooth curves, like her own jagged journey, perched on a wobbly display table. She hadn't planned this. An hour ago, she'd been setting up for annual summer barbecue, stacking plates like she used to stack worries. Then some artsy fam from local co-op dragged in an extra wheel, joking about spontaneous creativity. Emma's pulse kicked up. But instead of retreating to snack table like old times, she sat. Clay met palm. Wheel hummed. What emerged wasn't perfect, one side slumped like a deflated balloon, and a tiny thumbprint dented base, she'd blame it on texture. But it was alive. Raw. Hers. A guy in a flannel shirt, kind who'd scoffed craft therapy last month, stopped mid-bite of his pulled pork sandwich. His eyebrows climbed. You made that? Now. Someone snapped a pic. Flash. Then another. Emma's lopsided grin matched her creation. Life's worth capturing, even when it's messy. By sundown, her phone buzzed like a hive. Local arts page had shared shot, midlife magic, pottery under pressure. Comments piled up. Moms tagged friends. A grandma called it braver than bungee jumping. Emma chuckled, wiping clay from her jeans. Who knew a lump of earth and one gutsy spin could turn skeptics into stands? That wheel? It wasn't just for pots anymore. It was her quiet rebellion against hiding. And Seattle? It was ready to watch her throw another. Emma's hands no longer trembled, not from anxiety, but from purpose. Clay spun beneath her fingers, steady as a heartbeat, shaping something sturdy from what once felt fragile. That wobbly first pot, now a relic of her past, sat proudly on her shelf, a reminder that imperfection held its own kind of beauty. Months melted into years, and her tiny studio became a haven for others like her, women who'd spent lifetimes apologizing for taking up space. They gathered around her wheel, laughter mixing with hum of creativity, fingers digging into earth as if unearthing courage. Community BBQs turned into impromptu pottery swaps, glazed mugs passing between hands like shared secrets. Even her odd habit of humming off-key show tunes while centering clay became a signature quirk, dissolving tension like magic. Then came exhibition, her boldest move yet. Not some stuffy gallery affair, but a pop-up in a reclaimed warehouse, where every cracked bowl and lopsided vase told a story. Strangers lingered, tracing grooves left by uncertain fingers, seeing themselves in imperfections. Emma watched from corner, chest tight with pride, as a gray-haired woman whispered to her granddaughter, "See? Brave looks like this." Claywheel, once a solitary escape, now spun connections, stronger with every revolution. Emma, 45 and finally unshaken, knew her hands were meant for more than hiding. They were meant to lift others, to shape belonging from raw, messy possibility. Grab some clay.